I think it's time to officially start thinking about this. No, correction. Start preparing for this. What is work? What's your work life, workplace going to be like, especially in corporate America after the election? And that's no matter what happens, okay? No matter who wins, no matter who you like, who you're voting for, whatever. What is that whole situation going to be like? Is a fantastic breakdown from somebody we've talked about on the show before coming up in just a little bit. We're also going to talk about Trump versus Bloomberg in this one. A little update on the Fox interview with Kamala Harris that'll air tonight. It's 6 p.m. Eastern time. It's set to be taped, set to be aired. Brett Baer took our questions. We'll find out how that goes. And a great feel-good story to wrap it up with today coming up. You've probably seen this one about this dirtbag football fan. Happens to be a Ravens fan. Nothing against that fan base. You probably saw the viral video. It went everywhere. The feel-good part of it is the entire, mostly football fan community went after this kid because he was going after other fans on the street and was dumb enough to record it. But there's justice, which is a great thing. With all that said, welcome to it. Wednesday, 10:16. Welcome to Wicked Radio. Thanks for finding me so much. I appreciate you. Also, don't forget about the audio podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can always find that, and it lives as a post here later on throughout the day. But speaking of work, let's start it off with this little nugget of a story. How about this? I love my sociological polls. Society. A quarter of Gen Zers have brought a parent with them to a job interview in the past year. How about all this talk about, this generation of parents, which includes me and a lot of you actually, we're going to be better. We're not going to be like those. We're not going to be like those parents that created all the millennials. We're not going to do that. Well, not according to this. A YouGov poll did this one. It said 26% said their parent actually did physically sit in the interview. 7% said they even answered questions with them on the interview, sitting there trying to get a job. A quarter of Gen Zers said they brought the parent. Here's a little bit breakdown. I know there's a lot of numbers, but this fascinates me. 37% said the parent that accompanied them into the office didn't necessarily go into the room, but drove them there and stood by and helped them get their resume together. Can you imagine what happens behind the scenes? 18% said at least introduce themselves to the manager. That's right. Now, this is bias on my part, but maybe your mind is going to the same. But I'm thinking, when I read this story and relate it to you, sorry, full disclosure, I'm thinking moms in this situation. Oh, tell me you weren't too, right? I think it's a little bit rarer that a dad would actually go into this situation, more like a traditional helicopter mom. That's just where my mind, and that may not be true. They didn't ask that in the survey. I don't know. Could you imagine? And most of us right now are thinking, I couldn't first of all, where's the embarrassment level? Where is that? Where's the part of it where you'd say, oh my God, I would never, I'm trying to get a job and get into the world and go out there. By the way, a lot of these are postgraduates. These are like people who have college degrees or are about to graduate or are looking for a pretty high-profile internship while they're in college to try to get a job. Most of those people, you would think, are trying to break out into the world to become independent. And that's still most kids, and that's still most college kids or high school kids. But apparently not all of them. Well, I tell you, and you're thinking, wow, that sounds ridiculous. Maybe they're just answering that poll question and they're lying to the survey taker. No, not so. One of my kids is 20, and she is an RA at her college, residence assistant, and you're kind of in charge of the kids on the floor at your school, and you got to deal with that. You would not believe, it sounds comical, the stories I hear about parents of those kids, especially kids who are freshmen in college right now, where they want to come in, and I understand that because I did it too. You help a kid move in, you make sure everything's secure, and I understand that. It's being a good parent. No, they want weekly meetings with the RA. They want to talk to the dean of residence. They want to be involved with meal plans. Listen, I know it's hard. I'm a parent too. Let your kids go. And it's even harder if you're in charge of hiring this generation. It's only made it harder. So I think you're going to see on job postings pretty soon, work requirements, blah, 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 blah. Also, do not bring mom or you will not be hired. You want to hire somebody that brings their parent to an interview? Well, that's on you, but unbelievable. I was fascinated by that. Speaking of work, okay, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I didn't really know how to bring it up. So thankfully, a guy we've talked about on the show before named Mark Halperin was on Tucker. This thing is, I think he just released it, actually. Now, this was the guy, we talked about him the first time, talking about, this is back in the radio days, talking about Biden being jettisoned from the White House, basically becoming a figurehead, and they would push Kamala. He was one of the few people that had called that and actually got it right. And he was exactly right, almost to the day where that was going to happen. He's also been almost exactly right about the polling. He's kind of like a political insider, very smart guy. He's not biased one way or the other. He's really not. But he sees the internals. He knows where things are going. He's one of the few people that's actually talked about what you may have been thinking about, and I certainly have. I think for all of us, just to get ready for this, what is work going to be like after the election, post-election? What's the workplace going to be, especially in corporate America, right? You know what it's like now. And things have changed because everybody knows who you're voting for these days. It's just a thing. You know, it's not like when I was growing up and my dad would tell me, don't ever tell anybody who you're voting for and how much money you make. Those days are gone, mainly because of social media. Yeah, I guess that's it. But there's another thing where people aren't afraid to talk about their feelings anymore and who they're voting for, which is, I think, overall a healthy thing. But it leads to this. In either direction, if Kamala wins, it's going to be a lot like probably now, except for the fact that everybody knows who you voted for, okay? So there's a divide right there. That's one thing. And this is all created by the media, by the way. If Trump wins, though, which if you want to follow the polls, if you want to go by Polymarket, which has him up like, and these are the people who bet on elections, like 15, 16 points now, something like that. If that comes true, and it, very important, it's a completely fair election, what's the situation at your workplace going to be like with your coworkers? We've all gone through it. We know exactly what it's like. Well, this is fascinating what Mark Halpern said to Tucker on his show. And Tucker didn't even really completely believe it, actually. He was like, you got to be kidding me. But then you think about it and you're like, oh, I could totally see this happening. Now, this is long, but go through this and tell me that this isn't a distinct possibility. And the reason why I bring it up is you and I need to prepare for it.
Under a fair election, America chose by the rules pre-agreed to, Donald Trump again, I think it will cause the biggest mental health crisis in the history of America.
Uh-oh.
And I don't think it will be kind of a passing thing that by the inauguration will be fine. I think it will be sustained and unprecedented and hideous. And I don't think the country's ready for it.
So mental health crises often manifest in violence.
Yeah, I think there'll be some violence. I think there'll be workplace fights. There'll be fights at kids' birthday parties. I think there'll be protests that will turn violent. I hope they're not, but I think there will be some. But I think it will be more, it'll be less anger and more a failure to understand how it could happen.
Yeah, I think that's the basis of it, too. And you know where I'm going with this. Why is that? Why don't we understand? Because this is how the media has portrayed it. We all love the fact that mainstream, media is less believed, less watched. It has less credibility than ever before, but it's still very, very powerful, and it shapes these opinions. Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. You know what I mean? And I think probably on the other side, too, just the visceral reaction to far-left Democrats, too, is probably a little overstated as well for all of us. It's all divided, but it was all intentional. But here's where you and I sit as just normal people. So what do you do? Okay, either way. And it's time to start thinking about this. I really do believe that. Now, I've gone on the record for years now saying that nobody, and I learned this in 2016, nobody to this day has ever won a political argument on Facebook. Ever. I barely even go on Facebook anymore. It's just useless. Facebook is good for cat pictures and birthday reminders. That's about it. But it still happens and people still try to argue. Well, take that theory, if you've learned that like I have and learned the hard way. Take that to your workplace or public or wherever you are, and don't even try to get into these discussions with people. They're work friends. That's it. I honestly, if you're working in corporate America for 30 plus years, I would take that, and I would honestly say, don't even get into the discussion. Like when the discussion's coming up around the cubicles or around the coffee machine or in the break room area. You know where it's going. You can see the conversation percolating up. You may be getting upset. Stay away from it. Either way, now, post-election, and especially into the future, just stay away from it. You're not going to convince anybody. You're not changing anybody's minds. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen over a cup of coffee, during break hour or over a lunch. Keep that to your close friends and family. It's your best possible thing. And this affects me as well as a small business owner. For the people hiring, now you're in charge. Now, this is a different thing. If you're a corporate manager or a business owner, now you got a real problem here. And it kind of sort of goes back to our first story, the funny thing we led off with today, and how Gen Zers are bringing their moms and dads into interviews. It's a different game. It's a different kind of system. One of your major tasks is to kind of douse the political talk. Some companies have gotten better at it. Some managers are better at it. But do what you can to nip that in the bud. And say that exact same thing to your employees. Keep it out of the workplace. Keep it home somewhere. Now, he also mentioned there, Mark Halperin did, got into it, and that's why I love him. He got into why this is happening. Well, you know why it's happening. It's because of the media treatment of anything they disagree with. This isn't even opinion. This is just a fact. You've got the majority of media outlets, online and traditional too, and in electronic media, run by one particular political party. And you know which one that is. That leads to all this stuff because it inherently leads to propaganda. That's what it is. That's where we are right now. And there's this misunderstanding, which he also touched on, and why people will not understand how other people don't understand that this guy I've been told about Trump is so evil. It's because of the treatment of him and the lies that have been thrown at the guy. I mean, personally, would you like, maybe I wouldn't get along with the guy. I don't care. I want to hire a manager to fix the country. I don't want a homecoming king. I don't want the nicest guy in the world. I want the one that's going to do the best job. But you can't convince people of that. It's not going to work. But why is that image out there? Why people don't understand? Is a perfect example. Trump, speaking of him, he did a sit-down interview with Bloomberg, that media outlet, which is attacked him on everything, especially tariffs, weirdly, I don't know, for years. So the issue of tariffs came down at this economic forum they did at this town hall, and Trump pushed back, finally. So if the question's out there, like Mark Halperin said, they can't understand why people would vote for Trump. It's because, like it or not, whether you like his style or not, and a lot of people don't, it's refreshing for a lot of people in the public, normal, everyday, common people, to see somebody pushing back against this media that none of us seem to believe. This was Trump on tariffs. That people like this.
Positive, not a negative.
Well, just
let me just let me.
Give me
I
an
know
example.
how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative, and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative.
Yeah, it makes me chuckle too every single time because I know how the media works. I know the insides, the outside. I think the majority of people know how biased the media is. Still, a lot of people believe it. That's just the way it works. So to answer the question, like Mark Halperin said, people are asking, why, how could they support Trump? There's an example right there, because people love that. You know, they'll tell you every day, oh, he's too abrasive. I wouldn't like him. But secretly, they love that. When he pushes back against the media, they absolutely love it. I love this. This didn't start off as a feel-good story, but it wound up being a feel-good story. So this happened, there's an update this morning. This happened Sunday, NFL Sunday, where the Baltimore Ravens beat Washington. And they was in Baltimore, and that's key to the story here. And I'm not trying to disparage all fans of either fan base. You know, everybody's got them. Everybody's got the bad apples. But usually not this bad. Let's meet Jack Callis. Jack Callis is a Ravens fan and his photographer, by the way. They were stupid enough to videotape this. Somebody with an iPhone, I think, behind him. So after the game, this guy Jack Callis, this kid in his 20s, he's all jacked up. And they literally went looking. They went hunting for stragglers, as they call them, Washington fans in Washington gear, Washington jerseys. And they beat the tar out of them, just rolling through, looking for people they could beat up. Smaller than them, by the way. You probably saw the video. It has gone everywhere. But I promise you this winds up a feel-good story. But it sounded like this.
Do we got stragglers? Do we got stragglers? Do we got a straggler?
You know, they punched the kid, whatever. Okay. It gets better. And like I said, there's an update on this. As much as, you know, the NFL community, NFL fans take a bad rap. Oh, how can you waste your time if you put as much energy into, you know, fighting for your liberty as you are supporting your team, and, you know, you would be a better off. Yeah, I get that, whatever. But it's the new national pastime, and I enjoy it too, and it is what it is. But that same NFL community, and this came from fans of all fan bases, most of them especially Ravens fans, of which this guy's part of that flock, pun intended. They found him. They didn't know who he was at first, but they found him. That's how we know his name is Jack Callis. Well, Jack was employed by the Castendike Insurance Group of Morey, Donnelly, and Parr. Well, they fired him. They fired him as of yesterday, which is great news. And their statement is great, too. They put it on their own X account. MIDP has zero tolerance policy for violence and aggressive behavior. This individual is no longer employed with our firm. Well, I love that. I love that. And that's how it should be. But here's the second update. So now, as of just a couple of hours ago, actually, Baltimore police wants to talk to this kid and is most likely, according to Baltimore media, going to press charges against him. But here's the thing. That same NFL fan base that sought this kid out. And by the way, one of the few, I normally hate this, one of the few examples of cancel culture that actually was completely and totally justified. This is where social media worked out great to find him and kind of sort of dox him, actually, to be honest with you. Here's what else they need to do. And I'm calling on you, same NFL fans, to do the same thing. How about the photographer? Because he hasn't been named officially. Find the photographer who was with this kid who did the exact same thing. Who, by the way, he was making most of the noise in the video you heard there because Jack was beating up the two Washington fans. This is a case where it actually worked out. It's a feel-good story, in my book, to stop this kind of nonsense. First of all, what kind of an absolute dirtbag would you have to do that? And then, amazingly, lucky for us in our story, stupid enough to film it. And posting it, of course. Not thinking that it's going to get out there and people will find you immediately. And you know what? I'm glad they did. Now find the photographer. All right, programming note. This is happening tonight. They're still holding on to this, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Brett Baer interview with Kamala Harris will air. That'll be interesting. We'll have a lot of sound from that coming up tomorrow. I've seen a lot of stuff yesterday saying, "Oh, he's going to cave to her. It's going to be a joke. It's pre-taped." Oh, but he's answering questions like we had yesterday. That he's asking for questions that common folks can send in that he swears he'll ask, and he says the only precondition was it was pre-taped a couple of hours before it airs. But he said, other than that, no holds barred. All right, we'll see. Again, the best joke I've seen about this is Brett Baer and Kamala Harris have already called Arizona for Kamala. It's a Fox News joke. All right, we'll see. We'll have a lot of sound from that coming up tomorrow, I'm sure. But in the meantime, motoring through the work week, thanks so much for hanging out with me to start your day. I really appreciate it. It's just search for Wicked Radio with Bill Adams. You'll find me online. It lives as a post on X and on YouTube. And the audio version usually posts before 9 a.m., usually, unless I get really busy, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. I appreciate your time as always. Listen, have a great, great day. 2 takeaways from today. Don't ever take your parents on an interview. And don't ever hire anybody that does. But more importantly, don't ever take any crap from anybody. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.